What's up, guys? I'm really excited about this next video. I haven't done something like this exactly before, but first we're going to take a pull of the beer and then we'll talk about it. So, a little while ago, a year and a half ago, I was a guest brewer for a day at the Thirsty Pagan Brewpub in Superior, Wisconsin. I'll link that video right now. It was a really fun time. We took one of my homebrew batches and scaled it up to a 2-barrel system, which is 60 gallons, give or take, and made the beer. It was really fun. Allyson is the brewer up there. She made a beer this past fall, which she called Leafer Red IPA. It was the default, the Red IPA. It wasn't particularly red. It was a little bit dark for red. I liked it, and I asked her if she would be interested in sharing any of the details with me. Well, not only did she give me some clues, she gave me the whole recipe. So then what I did is I scaled it down to my size of a batch, and I made a beer. Now, let me go ahead and see if we can get a shot of this. It's also, I'm going to take the camera off here for a sec and cheat just a little bit. My beer was trying to be a little bit lighter than hers because hers was not particularly red. As you can see, it has gotten fairly clear. But mine, depending on the light, it's a little darker than red, but it is fairly red. So not only was it exciting to make this beer and see how it would come out, but today I'm going back up to Superior and I'm going to share it with her, and we're going to see what she thinks and see if it compares to, I don't know if I got this framed, right, how it compares to hers and her memory. So, the other thing about this beer that I hope to talk to her about is the base malt is something that I've never used, and I don't think it's super common to use, but it's a Briess Ashburne Mild. So it's a different kind of a malt, and it's supposed to be used in maltier beers. I might talk about that a little bit more when I'm tasting it with her. My beer is more of a pale ale strength-wise than a IPA, but we'll get into that in the tasting. So, the 2 points about this video that I think are interesting are using this different kind of malt, and also maybe you would have a chance to talk to a local brewer or brew pub, small brewery, large brewery. Maybe somebody would give you some tips and share some specifics about a recipe that you could make. And then, of course, if you make it, bring it back and share it with them, which is what I'm going to do. I have a short clip here right after this about the beer fermenting, and after that we'll be hopefully drinking it with Allyson. Cheers. Alright, just taking a little break from a little exercise, listening to the old Dinosaur Jr. Green Mind. And the new beer is actually going very well. I just brewed it yesterday. She's chugging away. It's got the San Francisco lager, which the range is something like 56 to 68 or somewhere, so it's a little on the bottom end, but I'll warm it up at the end so it'll be able to finish, and we'll see how it comes out. What's up, everybody? We made it. We made it to Thirsty Pagan. Allyson is here. Cheers.
Cheers.
We are sampling this beer as I discussed, and I suppose we can just talk about the beer we were talking about a little bit before we started rolling. My beer, the differences by statistics compared to hers are that it was about 1% in alcohol lower, and I also used the San Francisco lager yeast instead of an ale yeast. Do you remember what? Do you have like a reoccurring?
Yeah, we use Y yeast 1056.
Oh, okay.
From pretty much all of our house beers.
Okay. So that's what would have been in this one.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And so we were talking about, I tried to make mine, I think I mentioned this before, a little bit less dark, more, red, I guess, by lightening it up. And I showed it to you guys in a second ago, but it's kind of, well, how would you compare it to in memory color-wise?
Color-wise, it is actually lighter. I would say even a little bit more towards red. Ours definitely got dark end of what you would call red, the kind of red where you have to hold it up to see if it's red.
Yep.
Yeah, so,
yeah, that's kind of how it is with this one too.
Yeah, we're definitely a little bit heavier handed on it, so it was something that we noted, as well as, well, if we're trying to make a red, maybe we should lighten this up, and kind of noted some change for next batches.
Okay. Let's talk about, well, otherwise you were saying that it reminds you of your beer. It's in the wheelhouse.
It's in there.
Yeah. How about the hop? You thought yours came off a little drier, which yours was a 2-point lower final gravity and about a 8-point higher original gravity. So that could maybe play into that, but also the yeast. Does the hop bitterness or flavor, do you think yours had a more pronounced bitterness?
I think ours was a little bit, had a little bit more pronounced bitterness, and even a little bit more of the Chinook, or was it Chinook?
Yeah, Galena.
Chinook
Well,
in the flavor.
okay. And for my scale, I do have 2 ounces in there actually. So for my scale, I do have an ounce of Chinook at 10, an ounce in a hop stand, and then the Zaz. And I thought it was interesting you have the Zaz on there because I only use that if I make an all Zaz, check pills. I feel like it's gonna be a hard hop to stand out, with a Chinook and a 13.8% alpha acid Galena, in there.
Bittering. Yeah, this was a beer that I was working on with Steve Markern, one of my assistant brewers. He really, really loves those Zaz. So I wasn't surprised when he was like, hey, can I use this? I'm like, all right, well, it might get ran over by the rest of the Chinooks in there, but let's give it a try. And I think whether it was actually the combination of those hops or it actually was enjoyable, so I let him roll with it. So
if you were to take those out in the same beer, then it might taste different.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A little bit less herbal, maybe.
So I want to talk about the Ashburne Mild, malt by Briess. I had never even heard of this malt, and you used it as the base malt. I'm going to just read a couple of verbiage here that I got on the internet. It's a high kiln base malt for elevated sweet, malty and aroma, malty flavor and aroma, rich golden color, ideal for mild, brown, and amber ales. And you could easily throw in what this kind of thing is into that. Flavor, slightly malty, sweet, subtle, toasty note. I thought that was an interesting word. Color contributes rich golden hues. Higher residual maltiness / mouth feel. They recommend up to 10 to 25% for any style needing an enhanced malty flavor and aroma, or up to 50% in a Bock or a Doppelbock. Well, we're running this at probably roughly 90 or 8, mid to high 80s percentage wise. So, had you had some experience with this malt before? Is it a malt that you like? Talk about how you came to use that in such a high percentage in a beer like this.
So actually, this malt is in our IPA.
Okay.
It is mostly the color contributor for that beer. That was a recipe that I inherited from the former brewer. I actually knocked it down quite a bit in percentage. So in our IPA, it's probably, I'd have to look, but I would say it's in that 50% range.
Okay.
In there, it used to be closer to 80%, I want to say. It is quite a bit sweeter, and that's actually why I backed it out on our IPA. I like a little bit drier beer.
Okay.
It's a good possibility that we were running low on Brewer 2-row when we were brewing the seasonal, and our seasonals often get thrown into that mix where sometimes we have to use you know, a little bit higher percentage of Ashburn or you know, even just pale as a base malt instead of
kind of
intentionally using it in such a high
what you
ratio.
have if you need to be brewing and you just have stuff on hand.
Absolutely, but it is an interesting malt that Briess puts out. It is much more sweet than I mean, if you compare it to even Maris Otter or, you know, their pale malts or their mild, other places mild malts, it definitely has a sweetness to it. We often use it with, is there Victory in there as well?
Yep.
We use it in combination with that quite a bit.
What does Victory
kind
do
of
for you?
Toasty, biscuity kind of.
Oh, see, now that's what I was going to get to next. And I was wondering that there's sort of the toasty flavor. It's like a little bit of a burnt toast, you know, flavor. And it reminds me of the times when I've used the brown malt. I mean, just in a general way. And I think that's interesting because they may be kind of older styles of malt, maybe mild, brown, at least the terminology. And I was wondering if I was getting flavor, that kind of flavor from the Ashburne Mild, or now that you mentioned the Victory, and even there's almost a pound of extra dark crystal, if those are playing into that.
Yeah, so all of those kind of have these slightly sweeter burnt toast biscuity kind of flavors to it. And you know, we don't have any roasted barley or, you know, other things that would work like a caramel 120. That's much more just basic sweet, or, you know, like a very typical like red beer kind of thing with the roasted barley. So it does have a different flavor than, you know, like a lot of reds would. And I think it's a combination of using some of these things that maybe you haven't used a whole lot of.
Yeah, I don't use Victory very much, and I've never used this mild. And then there's a little bit of Black Prince, which is, I mean, little by little, I mean 1.6 ounces is what I ended up using, and I think that's largely for a little extra color. I wonder what happened if you took that out.
I think we could just probably leave it out.
Of this beer.
I think
you know, at that point, it's less than 1% probably, or I mean, it's not much. That would lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, and you even stepped it back from what we used.
I did.
So
I think using your percentages, it would have been more like 2 full ounces, and that's why 25% decrease or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's pretty good on the beer and the malt. I did want to ask you about your thoughts on commercial brewers sharing their recipes or recipe tips, you know, maybe not full recipes necessarily, with home brewers. Some breweries will print, you know, their recipes. I think Stone has done some of that. I think Jester King, you know, whichever breweries, they'll literally print the recipes. You can go get them. Some breweries will do clone kits with homebrew stores, so you can, you know, make their sort of approved versions. And then there's the opposite extreme where brewers are very tight-lipped.
Very quiet about it.
So, what are your thoughts? You were very open, you know, you were very generous, and I was appreciative to try this beer. I think it was a fun experiment. I like this beer. I'm happy with how it came out, and it was fun to be able to make a clone version of a brew pub beer. But what are your thoughts on that kind of openness?
Well, and honestly, when I was a home brewer, that was one of my favorite things, to do some of the clone kits, or, you know, try to find a clone recipe and try to make something that is commercially available. Then I could kind of compare like my skills to, you know, beer that I appreciated. And moving into, you know, being a professional brewer and, you know, starting to write recipes and develop flavors and stuff like that, you know, I'm still looking at other breweries and, you know, like, what beers do I like? What flavors do I want to emulate? And even on your system, this beer turned out different, and you're still going to make these fun tweaks that, like, well, you know, what if I do this? I love that part of it, and I love that part about being a brewer. Even if you try to really make this beer exactly at home, it's not going to stop you from drinking a beer in the bar when you come here. You know, so it only strengthens a relationship with a home brewer instead of being like, no, you just buy the beer. You know, instead you're like, you know what, brew it, bring it in, let me taste it. You know, challenge yourself. Sure.
That was my comment earlier on my intro video was, as this video is kind of a statement to say, hey, you go down to your local brew pub, and with 4,000 breweries now, more and more people have a local brew pub that probably is smaller in scale, or brewery with a tap room, where they're maybe not even like getting a ton of accounts, around town. They're just kind of selling on premise. You could probably talk to those people, and a lot of those people will be possibly willing to share things, and if they are, then yeah, make a beer, bring it, share it. I think what you said about somebody just wanting you to just buy the beer instead of making yourself is interesting, because that is a really weird thought to me, because like a home brewer does buy a lot of commercial beer anyway, right? But we just love beer, and we love like trying to, like you were saying, emulate commercial beers that you like. But then there's trade secrets, or there's if you have a really strong, unique beer, then you don't just maybe want other. I suppose some of the fear is that you don't want somebody to commercially make a similar beer, but maybe in your scale, you don't package, going out to cans and bottles and things like that. You can buy growlers. You can come here and drink the beer. You guys do some 50s, I think, sometimes.
Some 50s and sours.
But it's not really a situation where you're gonna be in jeopardy of losing a market share.
No, and that's something also that we're not fighting for that part. Like, we're fighting for people to come in and drink our beer at the bar. Right. And it's going to create a better relationship with people, to have an open conversation with them, than maybe if at some point I come up with, some amazing beer that's, so bizarrely unique, then I might, be a little bit more tight-lipped about it. Sure. But I don't see myself being like that. Yeah.
No, you're very open. People come in and do guest brewing, and you give tours, and that's very cool. And we're in the funky town. I could do a quick. Do you mind if I just do a quick panorama? Actually, you know what? I'll just say thank you. I'll do that, but I'll just say thank you for sharing. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's been fun getting to know you the last couple of years. And we are down in the funky town. Allyson and the crew, they do a lot of really nice sour beers. They do a lot of. Would you say that pretty much all the beers that you would get on tap are a blend of different ones?
At this point, almost all of our sours are a blend of some sort. Even if it's just a couple of barrels, there are very few things that are single barrel selections.
And then, did you do that at your Sourfest? And was that sort of a note of, was there any single barrel offerings?
There were a few at our Sourfest, which was in August. We had one that was called Evelyn, which was kind of a malty amber that was aged in a whiskey barrel, so it kind of had that whiskey old-fashioned kind of flavor to it. And then we also had one that was Best of Show winner from the local homebrew comp. Oh. The Great Northern Brouhaha. The Best of Show winner of that gets to come brew their beer. And a couple of years ago, it was a Flanders style red. So that was a single barrel. Just a few other kind of things that were still left over from before we got, now we have 50 barrels in here. Okay. So.
But usually you do a blend of different things, and so that's another episode for another day, and how that all works.
Yeah, tasting day in here is kind of crazy.
I can imagine. Your mouth is
lots of Tums.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank you.
See you later.